Okay, well, welcome. Just kind of an overview of where we're going today. So I'm going to touch base on the Planning, Collaboration, and Investment section, which is the section that runs our grant programs in OWRD, give you some background on our two funding opportunities, talk about the requirements, application scoring, how to apply, and then leave plenty of time for you all to ask us questions. So the Planning, Collaboration, and Investment section is a small but growing section within OWRD. And the purpose of our section is to build partnerships and incentivize Oregonians to pursue integrated and innovative solutions for complex water challenges and an uncertain water future. And the way that we do this is those 5 items at the bottom of the slide, one of which is strategic investments. So our strategic investments, we have numerous grant programs. We have place-based planning, feasibility study grants, water project grants and loans. We have a couple of new well funds for individuals, the Well Abandonment Repair and Replacement Fund and the Harney Domestic Well Fund. And then we also have the Irrigation Modernization funding. So as you all know, we're here today to talk about water project grants and loans and irrigation modernization funding. So a little bit of background on water project grants and loans. This funding opportunity has been around since 2016, and the purpose is to provide funding for water supply projects that meet in-stream and out-of-stream needs and achieve public benefits in 3 categories. And this piece is really important, so we'll talk about it a lot. But the projects must achieve public benefits in environmental, social, cultural, and economic to be eligible for funding. So the funding that we have available this year in the 2023 legislative session, the legislature authorized $10 million for water project grants and loans. $5 million is to be awarded in 2024, and $5 million is for 2025. So historically, this has been an annual funding cycle, but due to a change in the 2023 statute, we are now offering 2 funding cycles per year. Our first funding cycle applications were due in January, and we did not receive any complete applications for water project grants and loans. So that $5 million for 2024, the full $5 million is still available for this next funding cycle. Eligible entities for water project grants and loans are persons, nonprofits, and Indian tribes. And as you can see by the definition of persons on the screen, that this essentially almost anyone can apply to water project grants and loans, because this includes individuals, corporations, public and municipal corporations, state and federal agencies. Eligible project types for water project grants and loans includes water conservation, water reuse, above ground and below ground storage, stream flow protection or restoration, water infrastructure, and the broad category of other water supply projects that have benefits in those 3 categories. Now switching to irrigation modernization funding. Very similar. This funding provides funding for water supply projects, but specifically for those that improve water use efficiency of irrigation systems on currently irrigated agricultural lands. Similar to water project grants and loans, they must achieve public benefits in the 3 categories to receive funding. A little bit about the history of irrigation modernization. House Bill 5030 in the 2023 session allocated $50 million to the Water Supply Development Account to issue grants for irrigation modernization projects. And this is the account for water project grants and loans. Kind of the legislative intent is that there's a lot of federal funds that became available for irrigation modernization, but they required match. So during the 2023 session, the Oregon legislature authorized the irrigation modernization funds with the intent of providing state match in order to help Oregon access these federal funds. So because the intent was to provide match for federal funds, you'll see that one of the requirements for these irrigation modernization grants is that you have federal match. And they used this existing water project grants and loan program for efficiency to award the funds as quickly as possible to meet the need, because standing up a brand new grant program would have taken significant time. So in order to get the funds out the door quickly, they're using this existing grant program. So the two are separate but very closely tied. So the funding that we have available, as noted on the previous slide, $50 million was authorized by the legislature for the 2023-2025 biennium. $25 million is available in 2024, and $25 million, the remaining $25 million will be available in 2025. So also we have 2 funding cycles per year. So our first funding cycle applications were due January 17th, and we received 10 applications requesting $25.9 million. These applications are still undergoing review, and the Water Resources Commission will award funds in June. So we don't know yet how much of that $25.9 million that's requested will be awarded. So the second cycle that we're here to talk about today, applications are due in July. Projects would be maybe awarded any of those $25 million that are not awarded in June. So if there's any left over, in other words, and additionally, they may be awarded provisional funds from the 2025 million that will be available in 2025. So if a project received a provisional award, we wouldn't enter into a grant agreement until we receive that 25 million in 2025, and these are lottery revenue bonds that are scheduled to be sold in March. So the provisional award would say we would enter into a grant agreement after March, after we receive those funds. So similar to water project grants and loans, persons, nonprofits, and Indian tribes can apply to irrigation modernization. These are some of the eligible activities for irrigation modernization. Others may be eligible as well, but piping or lining irrigation canals, ditches or laterals, installing sprinkler, micro irrigation systems, upgrading existing infrastructure, installing or upgrading pump stations, including variable speed pumps, installing measuring devices or soil moisture monitoring, purchasing irrigation scheduling software, installing SCADA systems, or upgrading turnouts. So the application process for both is the same. Again, we're running these concurrently for efficiency. So the first step is you would fill out the draft application. If you would like, you can request a pre-application with OWRD. This is recommended but not required, and we'll talk more about what that is later in the presentation. Applications are due on July 10th, 2024. Once we receive the applications, OWRD grant staff will do an eligibility and completeness review. And then once we have our eligible and complete applications, we will post those online for a 60-day public comment period. At the same time, we send those applications to our multi-agency technical review team. We call them the TRT for short. And after that 60-day public comment period, the TRT will meet to review, score, and rank those applications. At the end of the TRT meeting, they will have their funding recommendation, and that funding recommendation is put out for a second public comment opportunity. And finally, the funding decision is made by the Water Resources Commission, and for this cycle, that will be in early December. And then if you are successful with your application, we would enter into a grant agreement with you probably in early 2025. So wanted to share a few of the requirements that are specific for these programs. Both water project grants and loans and irrigation modernization require cost match. For water project grants and loans, 25% is required, and the type of match allowed can be in-kind match or cash match, and the cash match can be your own organization's cash match, other state funds, federal funds, really anything is allowed except for other OWRD money. The status at the time of the application can be pending or secured. Make sure you read the application and application instructions to see what information we need regarding the match, and so that you meet those requirements. And then in order to receive funds, if you're successful with an award, before we will release any funds, we do need to see that you have that match secured. And the match must be secured within 18 months after you sign your grant agreement. Irrigation modernization is a little different. Note that you must have specific federal match in order to be eligible for the irrigation modernization funds. This is per statute. You must have Natural Resources Conservation Service funds that are associated with an authorized watershed plan. So not all NRCS funds are eligible, but it must be with an authorized watershed plan. U.S. Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart grants are eligible match, and then the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency grants that are eligible to be on Department of Environmental Quality's intended use plan. If you have any questions about the specific match and whether you have the right type of match, please feel free to call me or email me and I can help you sort that out. The match status at the time of the application, again, can be pending or secured. Similar to water project grants and loans, it does need to be secured before we will release any funds for your project, and you must have that match secured within 18 months of signing your grant agreement. There is no set percentage for irrigation modernization match as there is for water project grants and loans. Want to talk a little bit about water management and conservation plans. For both water project grants and loans and irrigation modernization, if your organization is required to have a WMCP, the plan must be submitted to OWRD and receive approval before you can submit an application for funding. There's no wiggle room on this. This is in statute. If you have questions about whether your organization is required to have a WMCP or the status of your WMCP, please reach out to the email at the bottom of the screen. This is a different section in OWRD, and they can help you determine if you need one or what the status is. A couple other things that are required for these grants. So if you are successful in receiving a grant, you will be required to measure and report the water diverted and used. So you'll see that in your application, we ask you to propose the method, timing, frequency, and location of those measurements in your application. We will take a look at what you propose and make a final determination after the award. If you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out and we can connect you to our senior technical analyst to help you with that. Second, we do require that you submit copies of all the easements, permits, and authorizations that are required to do your project before we will reimburse you for any funds. So we ask you to provide a list of what those easements, permits, and authorizations are in the application. And you're welcome to provide copies of those with your application if you already have them, or after the award, it will be a condition of your grant agreement that you submit copies of those to us. I want to talk about a couple of conditions that are specific for water project grants and loans for storage projects. So if your project is proposing, if you are proposing a water storage or aquifer recharge of a newly developed water that is outside of the official irrigation season, and your project will do one or more of these three things. So if it will impound surface water on a perennial stream, if it will divert water from a stream that supports state or federally listed sensitive, threatened, or endangered fish species, or if it will divert more than 500 acre-feet of surface water annually. You will be required to have a seasonally varying flow, or an SVF. And if your project is above ground, you will be required to have a 25% in-stream release. So a little bit more about what those two things mean. So a seasonally varying flow is the stream flow that needs to remain in stream to protect ecological functions of the watershed while diverting water. OWRD will establish the SVF and determine what that is, what that prescription will be on your storage water rate in consultation with ODFW and affected tribes. This would happen after grants are awarded. So we want you to be aware of this condition when you're applying for the grant, partially because this will add significant timeline to your project. So I want you to be aware of that. If there's more information about the seasonally varying flows on our website, and if you think this pertains to your project, feel free to reach out to us for more information or to discuss what this means. The second piece that is required for certain above ground storage projects is that 25% of the newly developed water must be legally protected in stream, and OWRD with ODFW will determine the timing of those releases. So again, this is for certain above ground storage projects for water project grants and loans. There is more information on our website about this as well, and feel free to reach out if this applies to your proposed project. So next section, I want to talk about the application scoring and the public benefits. This is a key piece to submitting a successful grant application is understanding the scoring and understanding if your project is a good fit for these funding opportunities. So application scoring is based solely on the public benefits that your project will achieve in environmental, social, cultural, and the economic categories. So highly recommend that you take a look at the scoring criteria document that's on our website. This document is for both programs, water project grants and loans, and irrigation modernization funding. Recommend that you take a look at this first to see if your project is a good fit. And then if you determine it is a good fit, use this document as you write your application. So for each of the three categories, economic, public benefits, environmental, and social cultural, there are 6 questions that we will ask you on the public benefits. So for example, in the economic public benefits, these are the 6 questions. Does your project increase efficiency or innovation? Does it create or retain jobs? Does it enhance infrastructure, etc.? And the full questions and more information about what we're looking for each question and how each question will be scored is in that scoring criteria document. Again, here are the 6 environmental public benefits that your project will be scored on. So is there measurable improvement in stream flow? Is there measurable improvement in water quality? Measurable improvement in groundwater levels? Does your project result in water conservation? Increased resiliency to climate change? And does it address ecological limiting factors? And then finally, the 6 social cultural public benefits that your project will be scored on are on the screen. So does it promote public health and safety and local food systems? Does it improve conditions for minority, low income, tribal, or economically distressed rural communities, etc.? So who will review and score these applications? As noted earlier, the folks that will do that, we refer to them as the technical review team. This is a multi-agency team made up of 7 different agencies, the ones shown on the left of your screen, including Oregon Water Resources Department. They will meet to discuss the applications. They will consider any tribal and public comments received, and then score the application based on those public benefits. At the end of the day, they will have the scores and make their funding recommendation based on the scores and the ranking of the projects, as well as funding available. So a little bit more about the public benefit scores. They're going to be scoring each question based on the positive and negative impacts, looking at the likelihood of achieving those claimed benefits, the change in conditions described. So what's the condition now and what will the condition be after you complete your project? And then supporting evidence or documentation. So this is the scoring scale for each question. So for each question, the technical review team will assign from 12 to -3 points. So 12 points is exceptional. This benefit really is exceptional. It really moves the bar in making improvements. A 12 is pretty rare. And then it goes down from there. So a score of 6 is a high benefit, 3 is medium, 1 is minor, and 0 is no benefit. There's also negative points available if technical review team members think that the project will actually have a minor or medium negative impact, such as on water quality or something. If they think your project would actually be detrimental to one of these items, they could assign a negative score. So for water project grants and loans, again, 3 categories of public benefits: economic, environmental, and social cultural. There are 6 questions in each public benefit category. So there are 72 available points in each category. Additionally, there are potential preference points for legally protecting water in stream and for collaboration. So for each of those 2 items, you could receive up to 12 preference points for those. So for water project grants and loans, there are 240 points available. For irrigation modernization, it is the same with just 1 change. You see towards the bottom of the screen, there's also additional preference points for legally protecting stream flow commensurate with the amount required in ORS 537.470, which is the allocation of conserved water program. So for irrigation modernization, there are 250 points available and essentially up to 22 preference points available for legally protecting water in stream. I will note, I noted earlier that a score of 12 on any one question is rare. So a total score of 250 or 240 for water project grants and loans is virtually impossible. So don't think of it as, you know, when you were in school and you were trying to get 100%. That's not really possible with this scoring scale because we understand that getting an exceptional benefit in all 18 questions is not practical for any one project. So we do have minimum category scores in order to be funded. So in order to be funded, the minimum category score that you must achieve in all 3 categories is 7. And the reason 7 was chosen is because that signals that the public benefits are more than minor. So if you recall, a score of 1 was a minor benefit, and there are 6 questions. So if you got a score of 1 on all 6 questions, your total score for that category would be 6, and you would not meet the minimum score of 7 in that category. So again, you have to meet the minimum score of 7 in environmental, social, cultural, and economic. So because of that minimum score requirement, I encourage folks to read through that scoring criteria document and those 18 questions and just kind of see if you think you could achieve that minimum score. You won't know how the technical review team is going to score your application, but you can read through those questions and say, oh yeah, my project does this. My project does this. No, my project does not improve groundwater levels, and that's okay. But you can kind of get an idea if you think you can achieve those minimum scores. So when you answer those questions, you're going to want to clearly explain and link your project to the benefits. So focus on the present benefits, what your project will achieve, not what was done in the past or what could happen in the future, but what will this project do, such as construction from this project will result in 3 new temporary jobs, and maintenance will create 2 permanent jobs in an economically distressed rural community. You're going to want to document and provide evidence to support your claims, such as data, study results, or professional opinion and narrative of qualified persons. And then whenever possible, quantify your benefits, such as 25% of the water conserved will be placed in stream, or an economic analysis indicates the project will result in an additional $1 million in tourism revenue. So last thing on public benefits, I will note that we do have the applications from previous years posted online, both successful and not successful applications. So if you want to see how other folks have answered these questions, you're welcome to look at previous applications. So how to apply. At first, identify a project and determine the eligibility and fit. Fill out the application if you would like to participate in a pre-application conference. That is recommended, but again, not required. And I do have a slide on that in a moment. Use the application checklist to ensure the application is completed and make sure it's signed. And then submit your application by 5 p.m. on July 10th. We prefer that applications be submitted by email to our owrd.grants inbox. If you would like to submit them via mail, you're welcome to, but make sure they are received by July 10th, not postmarked. So all of the materials can be found on the Water Project Grants and Loans pages. If you go to owrd.info/grants and loans, you'll go to the website, and Lisa also posted that in the chat for you. Thank you, Lisa. So the blue arrow, you'll see those are the application materials for Water Project Grants and Loans. And then there's a separate section next to the green arrow for Irrigation Modernization. I also put on that yellow arrow for you to point out that there are links to Word documents for most of these documents. You'll want to use the Word document for your application rather than the PDF. That'll be a lot easier for you to use the Word document. Make sure you take a look at the guidance documents. I've talked a lot about the scoring criteria by now, but there's also sample grant agreements for both Water Project Grants and Loans and Irrigation Modernization. So you can take a look at what a grant agreement would look like with OWRD. We also have the grant budget procedures and allowable costs document, which I would encourage you to look at. This has information about the cost match, allowable costs, and ineligible costs, as well as progress reports and how to submit fund requests. Pre-application conferences. So the purpose of a pre-application conference is really to help you submit a successful application and identify any eligibility issues or completeness issues with your application. So if you would like to request a pre-application conference, there's a one-page, there's the picture of it on this screen, a one-page document for both funding opportunities that you need to download and fill out. And that shows you which sections of the application that you need to fill out for the draft application. So we do require that you submit a draft application for us to review in order to schedule a pre-application conference. We need to receive that draft application and the request at least 14 days before we would schedule the pre-application conference. So keep this in mind working backwards. The application is due July 10th. We will not schedule pre-application conferences the week of July 10th. And then we require those 14 days to review your draft. So working backwards, you're probably going to want to get us a draft early to mid-June at the latest if you would like to request a pre-application conference. During that pre-application conference, we'll set an hour-and-a-half meeting and we will walk through your application, point out any areas that we see you could add improvement to or any eligibility issues. We'll also send it to other folks in our department and they may join the pre-application conference if they are able or have some feedback for you, such as your local water master. If you would like more information, we did a similar informational video last December and had a couple of additional sections that we cut from this, but there is a section on application tips and a section on OWRD grants. And if you would like to review those sections, they haven't changed. They are on our website under the guidance documents. At the bottom, there's this video, Water Project Grants and Loans and Irrigation Modernization information session. The application tips start at minute 28. And the OWRD grants section starts at minute 37, so you're welcome to review those. Final application reminders, submit your applications by 5 p.m. on July 10th. If you would like, participate in a pre-application conference, make sure that you're providing evidence to support your public benefit claims and quantify those public benefits whenever possible. Demonstrate collaboration in your application, and please don't hesitate to contact us with any questions. The best place to contact us with questions is owrd.grants@water.oregon.gov, because this email address goes to numerous grant staff and we can answer your questions. So with that, I'm just going to open it up and see if anyone has questions